how much does it cost to bring on a fractional CFO for your e-commerce shop? In the prior video, we talked about some of the broad things that a CFO can do for you. Where are we? What is the context of where we are with the industry? Where do we want to go? And how do we get there, right? That's kind of broadly what a CFO does. There's a million practical things related to modeling and unit level profitability and cash flow forecasting and understanding your balance sheet and things that really help the CFO give you that counsel. But at the end of the day, you want your advisor to be able to help you understand where you are and help you get to where you want to be. But how much should you pay for that? And so I just wanted to kind of speak candidly about this as a CFO that handles a lot of e-commerce companies, and my team does also. And so I read a couple articles recently that I think are probably on point that talk about the average fractional CFO for a kind of small to medium-sized company being anywhere between $3,000 and $10,000 a month. And then I saw another one that said anywhere between $1,200 to $2,500 a day. That's probably a pretty fair range. I think the thing is you got to know how to compare this to the cost of hiring somebody, right? So if you're trying to recruit someone, and I just say this with no arrogance, but if you're trying to recruit someone that has, MBA level knowledge of finance and then has actually been the CFO for businesses like yours, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of e-commerce sales under his or her belt, boy, that's an expensive hire to bring on full time, right? I mean, you couldn't hire me because I own a business and I'm happy doing what I'm doing, but there are probably guys out there that are better at this than I am that you could bring on. And if you're a $10, $20 million company, you may need to bite the bullet and just go ahead and pay $200,000 a year to hire a CFO that really has the deep knowledge that you need to drive your business forward. However, until you get there, even though you might pay a little bit more, quote unquote, per hour to have someone fractional, boy, it sure is easier to be able to just let us go if something ever goes wrong, or, bite off pieces of our expertise without having to bring us on full time. And I think that's really a strong argument for why, having a fractional partner that's vertically integrated, it's very, very niched in e-commerce is a good play. And obviously you overcome some real awkwardness. I've had it happen to me with some business before where you hire a high level person. Not only are you paying a high level salary, but if things go wrong, getting rid of that person can be really terrible. In fact, they can have a devastating effect in your business. Well, if you hire an agency that has lots and lots of customers, I'm not going to eat just because you pay me or not pay me. You're not my only customer. And so having someone that's a little easier to work with makes a lot of sense. And so, again, I think there's a couple things I want to give you here about pricing, and then I'll talk about how it works for Seller Accountant. One is I think you want to make sure you have a few things that are true about your outsourced partner. So a quick kind of checklist, if you will. You want to make sure that if you're going to pay for a fractional CFO, that they really have the e-commerce accounting chops. They have to understand where all this complex data coming out of eBay versus Amazon versus Shopify. They need to be able to keep an eye on your financials to make sure that they're legitimate. You want to make sure that they are focused on brands and company sizes that are kind of close to yours. So for instance, if you're a $50 million brand seller that is primarily selling through Shopify, you probably want to find a CFO that has experience with $50 million sellers that have some Shopify direct-to-consumer non-marketplace exposure. If you're a $2.5 million seller, which is more, $1 million to $5 million kind of tended to be our niche for Seller Accountant, and you're, 70% Amazon, 30% Shopify or some other channels, then you want to find a CFO that's really understand. In fact, you really want to find a CFO that's been right where you want to go so they can help lead you to where you want your business to head. And then, so what are some things that would drive cost for a CFO engagement? And they're pretty basic things, but things like how complex is your business? I mean, are there, 7 different sales channels that need to be measured or just one, right? Do you have a catalog of 5 SKUs or a catalog of 2,500, that kind of thing. The second thing is how clean are your financial statements? This is one of the reasons that Seller Accountant will almost never take on a CFO client unless we're also doing the bookkeeping, because the quality and validity of those accrual financials where you can really compare month over month performance, it just can render render even a really good CFO totally useless if your financials are late or if they're not very good. And then the third thing you want to look at in terms of driving cost is, are there other things that are easy to access from a data standpoint? I guess what I'm really saying here is, can your CFO partner understand what your inventory numbers are, where you're spending advertising dollars, where the other key data points are, so that he or she can pull it together and say, okay, here's what the business is looking like, here's what we need to do. If it's harder, to get to that data, then it probably is going to cost you more because it's going to take more of their time. And then I guess the final point I'll make about what drives cost is, how often do you want to meet, right? We have clients that want to meet with us every week. We have clients that want to meet with us once a quarter. And obviously the cost of that CFO service is going to differ. And so final point I'll make in this video is when does it make sense to hire a fractional CFO? And I think it just depends on your needs. If you're tiny, if you're a $100,000 a year seller and you're trying to get to $200,000, it's going to be hard to justify the expense of most CFO engagements to try to get you from $10K a month to $20K a month in sales. But if you're a $1 million seller trying to get to $2 million, or better yet, if you're a $500,000 seller trying to get to $5 million, in other words, you want to have a 10x jump in your company, then the amount of additional profitability that would be gleaned if you're able to successfully reach your goals is really large. And so it makes a lot more sense to be aggressive. And frankly, the numbers are bigger, so it's more important to get good advice, to get good counsel. And so in that situation, again, 100K trying to go to 200K, maybe go to a webinar, or maybe find someone that you can have a couple times a year a call with, where you're not really having to pay full price for a CFO. And then, again, if you're larger, you may want to go ahead and bring someone from my team on with you that really has the in-depth experience to help you get from where you are to where you're going. So I feel like this has been a bit of a rambling video. I apologize. But when you think about cost for a e-commerce focused CFO, it's always going to be better to go ahead and hire someone that is better, but fractional. So you might pay a little bit more per hour versus having to bite off an entire salary, unless you're 15, 20 million in revenue. So we believe in the outsourced model. You're going to want to have somebody who's very vertical, really understands your niche. Even more than that, is kind of has some experience, maybe in your product blend, but for sure in your sales channels and your inventory situation, that kind of thing. And then finally, the amount of CFO that you want to bring on is going to be dependent on how large you are and how aggressively you want to grow. The more sophisticated, the more quickly you want to reach your goals, the more you probably need to be ready to spend on a partner, because they're going to have more work to do. So I hope this is helpful. Take care, guys. Have a good one.